On September 24, 2024, the state of Missouri executed a man by lethal injection. His name was Marcellus Williams. He had spent 23 years in prison for a murder, he said, until his last breath, that he did not commit. Here is what made his case different from almost every other execution in modern American history. The local prosecutor, the same office that had originally convicted him, agreed with him. 3 independent DNA experts agreed with him. The murder weapon itself, when finally tested, excluded him as a suspect. None of it stopped the execution. This is the story of how that happened. And it is a story about what can override even the strongest evidence of innocence, when a state has already decided it wants to move forward. To understand this case, we have to start with the person who was killed. Felicia Gayle, known to friends as Leisha, had spent over a decade as a reporter for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. In the early 1990s, she made a choice that a lot of journalists eventually consider. She left the newsroom to do social work instead, trading the deadline pressure of daily news for direct work with people who needed help. She lived in University City, a suburb just outside St. Louis, with her husband, Dr. Daniel Pekus. On the evening of August 11, 1998, Dr. Pekus came home from work. It was around 8 o'clock. He found his wife's body at the bottom of the stairs. She had been stabbed 43 times. A large kitchen knife, one of their own, from their own kitchen, was still lodged in her neck. Whoever did this had broken a window pane near the front door, reached in, and unlocked it. They had waited inside the house. Police believe Felicia Gayle was attacked just after she stepped out of the shower. Her purse was missing. So was her husband's laptop computer. It was, by any definition, a brutal, senseless crime. And for more than a year, it went completely unsolved. For over a year, University City Police had almost nothing. No witnesses, no forensic match, no suspect. Then in 1999, 2 people came forward with information. The first was a man named Henry Cole. He had been incarcerated alongside a man named Marcellus Williams at a St. Louis workhouse in the months after the murder. Cole told police that Williams had confessed the murder to him in detail, describing how he broke in, waited for the woman to come out of the shower, and stabbed her. The second was Laura Asaro, Williams' former girlfriend. She told police a similar story, that Williams had confessed to her as well, after she found Gayle's purse and identification card in the trunk of a car he had been driving. There was a financial detail that matters here, and we'll come back to it. Gayle's family had announced a $10,000 reward for information leading to a conviction. Both Cole and Asaro stood to receive a share of that reward for their testimony. Police also recovered a laptop computer, sold, they said, by Williams to an acquaintance named Glenn Roberts, that they believed had been taken from the Gayle home. Marcellus Williams was arrested. In August 2001, after a jury deliberation that lasted less than 2 hours, he was convicted of first-degree murder, burglary, robbery, and armed criminal action. 90 minutes later, the jury recommended a death sentence. Here is what is genuinely unusual about the Marcellus Williams case. When you compare it to most wrongful conviction stories, there was no physical evidence connecting him to the crime scene. None. Not fingerprints, not blood, not hair. Investigators recovered hairs from Gayle's shirt and from a rug beneath her body. Those hairs did not match Williams. They did not match Gayle. They did not match her husband. Bloody footprints were found at the scene. They did not match Williams' shoe size. Skin and blood recovered from underneath Gayle's fingernails, consistent with a struggle, consistent with her fighting back. Did not match Williams either. The case against him rested almost entirely on the word of 2 people, a man with a documented history of dishonesty, according to his own family, who didn't come forward until he was offered $5,000, and Williams' ex-girlfriend, whose account of events shifted in some details between her initial statement and her trial testimony. There was also no clear motive offered by the prosecution, no prior connection between Williams and Gayle. And during jury selection, prosecutors used their strikes to remove 6 of 7 qualified black jurors from the panel, in a case with a black defendant and a white victim, leaving a jury of 11 white jurors and 1 black juror to decide his fate. This detail would matter enormously. decades later. For more than a decade, the case sat as a closed conviction. Williams remained on death row, maintaining his innocence the entire time. Then, in 2016, his legal team won the right to test something that had never been properly tested at the original trial: the handle of the knife, the actual murder weapon, the knife that had been left in Felicia Gayle's neck. DNA testing of that knife handle detected male DNA. The lab ran the comparison. It was not Marcellus Williams' DNA. 3 independent DNA experts reviewed the results. All 3 reached the same conclusion. Williams was not the source of the genetic material found on the weapon used to kill Felicia Gayle. In 2017, then Governor Eric Greitens did something almost unheard of. With Williams' execution scheduled for just days later, he issued a stay minutes before it would have been carried out, and convened a board of 5 former judges to formally investigate the new evidence. For the first time since his conviction 16 years earlier, it looked like Marcellus Williams might actually get the hearing his case deserved. He would have to wait 7 more years to find out. The board of 5 former judges, appointed by Governor Greitens in 2017, was supposed to investigate the DNA evidence and determine whether Marcellus Williams' conviction could stand. It never finished its work. In June 2023, 6 years after it was created and without ever issuing a report or a recommendation, Missouri's new governor, Mike Parson, dissolved the board entirely. This board was established nearly 6 years ago, and it is time to move forward, Parson said in a public statement. We could stall and delay for another 6 years. This administration won't do that. Williams' legal team sued. They argued the dissolution, without any findings being issued, violated his constitutional rights. A local judge agreed to hear the case. Missouri's Attorney General appealed to the state Supreme Court to intervene. On June 4, 2024, Missouri's Supreme Court sided with the governor and, on the very same day, immediately scheduled a new execution date, September 24, 2024. The DNA evidence that had been sitting, reviewed by 3 independent experts confirming Williams was not its source, had still never been formally examined by any court. Here is the detail that makes this case almost impossible to file away as a simple miscarriage of justice from a less careful era. The very prosecutor's office that had originally convicted Marcellus Williams changed its mind. In January 2024, St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney Wesley Bell filed a motion asking the court to vacate Williams' conviction entirely. He cited the new DNA evidence. He cited apparent racial bias in the jury selection, the same 6 of 7 black jurors struck pattern we mentioned earlier. He cited what he called ineffective legal representation at trial. This was not an outside advocacy group making this argument. This was the elected prosecutor for the very county that had convicted him, formally telling a court, "We believe we got this wrong." A hearing was scheduled. Then, days before it could happen, new DNA testing produced an unexpected complication. Additional genetic material recovered from the evidence belonged not to a mystery suspect, but to members of the original prosecution's own trial team, who had handled the murder weapon decades earlier without gloves. The case had been contaminated by the very office that built it. Faced with this, Williams's attorneys and the prosecutor reached an agreement. Williams would enter what's called an Alford plea, accepting that the state had enough evidence to likely convict him again, while formally maintaining his innocence, in exchange for a sentence of life without parole. No more death penalty. Felicia Gayle's own family supported the agreement. A judge approved it. Hours later, Missouri's Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, appealed to block it. What followed was one of the most legally chaotic final weeks of any death penalty case in recent American history. The Missouri Supreme Court sided with the Attorney General, blocking the agreement that would have spared Williams' life, even though the local prosecutor and the victim's own family had agreed to it. On September 23, 2024, one day before the scheduled execution, the Missouri Supreme Court heard oral arguments on a final motion to halt it. They unanimously denied it, stating there was, in their words, no credible evidence of actual innocence. That same day, Governor Parson rejected a clemency petition. The execution proceeded as scheduled on September 24, 2024, at 6 p.m. Marcellus Williams had spent his final years in prison as the imam for the Muslim inmates in his cell block. After converting to Islam and taking the name Khalifa, he wrote poetry. His final written statement, witnessed before his death, read, "All praise be to Allah in every situation." He was 55 years old. It would be simple to tell this story as a case of pure, deliberate cruelty. The truth is more unsettling than that, because it isn't really about any single villain. It's about what happens when a legal system is built to finalize decisions, and almost everything in that system is engineered to resist reopening them, even when new evidence emerges, even when the people who built the original case start to doubt it themselves. A local prosecutor believed Williams was likely innocent. A victim's own family agreed to a resolution that would have spared his life. 3 independent DNA experts agreed the murder weapon didn't match him. None of that proved sufficient to stop a state Supreme Court and a governor from allowing the execution to proceed exactly as scheduled. Since 1973, more than 200 people sentenced to death in the United States have later been exonerated. For roughly every 8 executions this country has carried out, one more person has been found, eventually, to have been wrongfully condemned to die. Marcellus Williams' case did not end in exoneration. It ended in execution, with the doubt about his guilt still, formally, unresolved. Whatever you believe happened on August 11, 1998, this much is documented fact. The murder weapon that killed Felicia Gayle did not carry Marcellus Williams' DNA. No one has ever offered a satisfying answer for whose DNA it actually was. This case raises a question that has no easy answer. What is the right threshold of doubt before a state should be willing to take an irreversible step? If you want to understand how often cases like this happen and how the system responds when they do, I've covered several more in this series. I'll leave links on screen now. Thank you for watching.